Hey everyone. All right, so we are going to talk about the book of the month, and I kind of wanted to go over this quickly, just sort of what I'm going to do with this to begin with, because my mind is very much blown away at the moment by this book. So this book, we are doing Conversations with God. This is book 1 by Neale Donald Walsch. I remember hearing about this book through, I think Aaron Doty recommended it like a really long time ago. I remember screenshotting it and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it, whatever. And to be honest, I think I was kind of turned off by the God usage of it, right? We talk about like the meaning behind that word. And let me just tell you, I am completely blown away by this book. So this video is going to be just on chapter 1. So this is what happened. As I was reading this book, so this is, like you can see, this is chapter 1. So as I was reading this, I started to dog ear and highlight pretty much every page. And it's one of those texts where you really have to, one, not only be in like the mood to really be open to receiving the information, but kind of have to be ready for it. But it reminds me of when I read A New Earth the first time, where there's a lot of deep concepts. And as I was reading, I'm like, there's no way I could do like a whole video on just this, like just this whole part, because there's so much deep information in this. And what it reminded me of was actually similar to what I experienced like at the plant medicine ceremony, where it's just it's very beautiful, it's very elegant, it's very humbling, and I feel like it's very sacred. I know I keep kind of using that language, but that's how I really feel. So I want to make sure I kind of honor the messages that are come through for this, and I want to take the time to really integrate it in and understand it in my heart, and then kind of give it to you guys in a way that resonates. So this video is just chapter 1. I highly recommend you guys getting this book if you're not like following along with this, and reading it. Even if you do like a chapter a month or something like that. It is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So this first part basically is about this guy, Neale, okay, right? So he is basically channeling God through this book, and it's basically just a dialogue between sort of their conversations, and Neale is asking certain questions and God is responding to these questions. And it's really beautifully written, and it is straight up just a conversation between them. And the way that God, and let's just say divine consciousness or God or the universe or however you want to identify it with, the way that they respond to it is so heartfelt that I'm just kind of blown away. So let's just kind of get into the first chapter. A lot of it was about just the concept of God and the concept of who we are and why we're here. So first he kind of starts asking the question about like, you know, who we are, why we're here, like why can't we see God more clearly, and why can't we know him, and all of these things, and him, you know, take it that as it resonates, you know, them, him, her, however we want to say it. And God basically says that the soul knows everything when we incarnate into this lifetime. And what it's actually doing is it's learning to become anew. So I think he kept saying, he's like, it's not like discovering something within us. It's not like finding something. It's actually just us evolving, and almost like, say we shed a skin and we incarnate into earth, and we're in like the new skin here, and now we get to create whatever we want to create, and that's our soul expanding. Like we get to live and create however we see fit, and we'll go into free will and we'll go into choice and decisions and that kind of thing towards the end of this. But he says the soul yearns for experience. And this is where he started to go into like ideas versus, sorry, because I'm making sure I'm following on my notes, because I made like very detailed notes. But he starts talking about the difference between an idea and an experience. And the whole reason we incarnate here and what our soul like deeply yearns for is the experience. It's for our soul to experience the concept. And what I mean by concept, I mean idea. So let's say like, you know, for example, you know, I I want to write, I'm writing a second book. Let's use that for an example. And I want to go on a book tour, and this is true. This is going to happen. And my soul, this is beautiful. My soul incarnated, and it first started out as an idea, as a concept, like, hey, I should write a book. That would be really cool. And we kind of think about things and we think about it, or say we're pulled towards, being a speaker or a doctor or a nurse or whatever it is. And it has to first become the idea or thought, but the whole point of the incarnation is the experience getting to that expansion. And we've talked about this, which of course this beautifully coincides with the journey that we're talking about. The experience is the whole part. It's the whole reason, because we bring in so many different multi-layered experiences through that, free will, igniting, unconditional love, expanding on unconditional love, breaking through old patterns, old past lives. Like, there's so much that goes into the experience of, let's say, just one idea and one concept, and that's why we feel that internal pull towards these things, so heartfelt. Now, he said, this was one of the statements was, generosity, but unless you act upon it, it's just a concept. So the way that we start to understand and integrate it in is by actually taking the action towards it. So he said, in the action step of doing something, of doing generosity, that is how we experience the generosity. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason we're here. He said, your soul's only desire is to turn its grandest concept about itself into its greatest experience. And this is where this was kind of like blowing my mind, because this response from God was talking about how he goes into the Big Bang, and I hope I explained this correctly. I'll have them help me, but he goes into talking about the Big Bang and different universes and all this stuff. And he basically says, like, he started out as, like, let's say it's like God, this entity. And what he wanted to do was, in order to expand and create and to see himself, he created all these different sort of systems. So let's just focus in on Earth right here. So he created Earth. And the whole point of Earth is for God to see itself expand in the experience. So he created, like, the theory of relativity with time and space. He created free will and choice. And he goes in and talks about the duality of the universe, and how in order for us to experience him, in order for us to experience us, God, the reflection, all that is, we have to experience that of what it's not. So when we talk about the duality of something, the only way, I don't want to say the only way, but for this sake of this conversation, let's talk about one of the main ways to, because I don't absolutely know anything, right? This is just a concept. Well, now it's an experience, because I'm talking about it and I'm taking action on it. But let's say the duality. We say this all the time. In order to experience love, we can only measure love from experiencing that which it's not, which is hate or shame or fear, whatever it is, whatever the opposite of that is for us. And, on the flip side of that, like when we feel shame and fear and hatred, we also know that on the opposite end, I say this all the time, the capacity now grows for how much love we can feel by the depth of how much we did not feel it. So he says the whole point is for him to become anew and expand. Or I don't want to keep saying him. It's like for us, for God, for the universe to expand and to see itself in itself, right? When we see God, like within ourselves, when we see God in our partner or in our kids or whatever it is, I think I've said this in another video where I was sitting in the dog park and I was looking at all these people in the park and I'm like, this is just God expressing itself in like 30 different ways or 40 different ways. And it was so beautiful to watch, because it was just like God expressing itself in its perfection. And that is you. And I'm going to do another video on the whole holding space of just allowing someone to express itself, because when you really bring your awareness around that and you really watch it and tune in, it's one of the most beautiful things, one of the most beautiful experiences to really truly tune in and watch that. So that'll be the next video. So he said, everything is just a concept until you do. The whole point of soul and universe is for the experience. Otherwise, it's just merely a concept or an idea. In the moment that fear existed, love was able to be experienced. So it's like in the not experiencing, we were able to then experience it, because then our awareness was there. We had the physical experience of it, of what it's not, in order for us to then feel what it actually is, right? Like when we feel hatred or fear, we're like, oh my God, this is not, like you can feel the difference in that, and you're like, I don't want to feel it. I want to feel love. I want to feel the opposite of that. I want to feel what the universe is. I want to feel what God is. I want to feel what, sunshine is. So when he said, so he had talked about the theory of relativity quite a bit, which is time and space. And he's like, in order to get from point A to point B, so let's talk about just like Earth in this dimension, he created the time and space in order for us to be able to measure the experience. So in order for us to take action on it, in order for us to experience, we have to have time and space. We have to have that measurement, that literally that space and that measurement to understand that the action step of actually doing something, of the experiencing the measurement of love, or experiencing the measurement of, hatred, or whatever it may be. Let me see here. I wrote down certain pages that I wanted to read, so I want to make sure I read them. Okay. Let me see here. Yeah, my divine purpose in dividing me was to create sufficient parts of me so that I could know myself experientially. There's only one way for the creator to know itself experientially as the creator, and that is to create. And so I gave to each of the countless parts of me, all of us, the same power to create, which I have as the whole. One second. My purpose for you is that you should know yourself as me. But in order to do that, that is for you to first know yourself as not me, which always makes me think of the separation. Like for so long, when I hated myself, and for so long when we live in the ego, and and we love the ego, so I'm not knocking the ego, but when we are so separated from our authentic truth, from our soul, and we are in this illusion of not being good enough, or not being skinny enough, or rich enough, or whatever it is, it's like when you get a taste of that, and you do all this self-work, and you peel back the layers, and you look at the parts that are really freaking painful, and you get underneath that, and you sit in this stillness, and you sit in that space where you're like, and you can feel the love within yourself growing, you can feel your heart opening and your heart expanding. That to me is God. Like that is us. That is just, I keep saying this, but it's like God, when I was in ceremony, I'm just going to bring this up and talk about it now because it keeps coming up, but I'll do another little video on it. But there was this beautiful moment in ceremony where I was truly watching everyone else in the room, and I was watching them experience this experience, like this ceremony, and all their journeys, right? This wasn't me directly talking to them at all. It was me just simply observing. And I remember this was the middle part of the ceremony. That's what I'll do. I'll do a whole video on the whole ceremony. So this is just part of it, where Spirit was like, now just observe, sit in your divine feminine and just observe, just hold space for people, because that's part of that divine feminine energy, emotionally and physically. So I sat there and just watched, and I was like, this is incredible. I'm like, not only was I humbled, but I was like, I have this opportunity to just sit here and watch God express itself in its perfection. And that was like watching a friend in ceremony go on a journey and cry through something, or get sick over something and move through it and move beyond it and start to heal that part of itself. That was me watching someone play the acoustic guitar who wrote a song for all of us. He played for like 2 hours and was healing people through the music. And it's like that is God. And to watch that and hold space with that and to be in that presence, that is what I feel like the whole point of this is. And when I talk about the journey, that is the journey. That is the experience. And I think we get really caught up in that end destination where it's like, we need to have that $100,000. We need to have that 200, we need to have this, we need to have that. And we forget those meaty parts, that beautiful reflection of what and why we are truly here. And it blows my mind. And it's like, there is no amount of money, there is no amount of, I don't even know, I'm like trying to think of what else I like desire. Cars, whatever we can say that I would give up or that I would need or that I would want over that experience of watching the expression of someone just being themselves and just evolving and expanding and growing in that reflection. There's nothing that amounts to that would ever even compare to that emotion and that fullness that I felt in my heart and that I still feel. That's what I feel like this book, that's what I feel like this is teaching. It's like that beautiful wholeness. When I was reading this, I think I cried through half of it because I was like, yes. I'm like, this is like the feeding my soul. And there's this end part that I'm going to read at the end because it was just, I cried. I've read it like 20 times. Okay, off my tangent. All right, so he says, my purpose for you is to know yourself as me. It's simple, but it gets complex because in order for me to see you, you have to see what is not me. So that's what we just talked about. So physicality is the only way to know experientially what you know conceptually. So that's the reason why he created this cosmos, the theory of relativity, is to experience God. Because he said the physicality is the only way for the experience to happen for us to then know the concept, okay? In order for you to know yourself as the creator, one must create. And then he says that, then they were talking about how when we incarnated, we decided to like forget that, basically. We decided to not bring that with us, because then what would be the point? If we truly deeply came into this life as, say, a newborn, and we're like, well, we know we're a part of God, so like this is great, we can do whatever and blah blah blah, like we're still God. The experience and the lessons and the expansion and the evolution and the enlightenment would not be the same, right? It's different when you have to physically and experience move through something that is difficult to see in order to see the love, in order to see the lesson. And that is where where that kind of challenge is. I don't even want to call it a challenge. That's where that experience is. So our experience is to remember or become anew, to expand divine wholeness. To forget and remember through experience is the act of choosing. So when he was talking about choosing to remember God, to remember who we are, knowing is a divine state, yet the grandest joy is being. Being is only achieved after the experience. So this reminds me of, again, ceremony. I know I'm still talking about it, guys, but it changed my life. And I feel like now I'm getting to a point where I've integrated certain parts that I feel like I can open up more, and because I understand it. But I always knew that I was, like, let's say, a beautiful woman, right? And I take that back. For, let's say, 30 years, I truly, deeply despised myself. Like, I did not love myself. I did not think I was beautiful. I might have had glimpses, And the more work I was doing, the more, shamanic healing and self-work and mindset shifts and everything over the past, 3 years that I've been doing, I began to get more glimpses of the beauty. And I was letting go of more of the hatred. And then I'd get more glimpses of this love. And then I would let go more of the shame. And it was this sort of slow, I don't want to say slow, it came at the right time, process of integration of understanding myself and loving myself. And it wasn't until ceremony where I experienced the truth of how beautiful not only I am, but how beautiful we all deeply, authentically, truly, wholeheartedly are. And it was through that experience that I was truly able to feel God and the universe. Truly, truly, truly. It was so strong and undeniable that my faith in the universe is like unshakable. I have so much trust and so much faith and so much beauty in it. And it was really through that experience that the concept, or, being in that space, that it really rooted in, that I was like, this is God. This is the universe. It's amazing. He talks about the Holy Trinity, the unity of God. Evolution is knowing, experience is being. When I say being, I mean like just that stillness. When we talk about that stillness in between, when you're in that silence and that quiet part, just that beingness of you, that's where that power is. He says Father, so the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the Father is knowing. You cannot experience that which you do not know. Through the Son, through the experiencing, that's where we act out. That's where we physically take the action steps to understand the knowing, right? And then he says the Holy Spirit is the being. It's letting go of everything, just being simple and just being in your beingness and knowing through that. And he said through that is how we then basically create, is through the understanding that the knowing, like we need the knowing, but then we need the doing, and then we need the beingness. Like we need to bring all three of those together to create. I had never looked at it that way. I'm still like, it's still up here where I'm like, because that was like 2 pages of that, and I had to reread it like 10 times. Through that, knowing that in your greatest trial can be your greatest triumph, and it's the reaction to the challenge. To experience and you create is a statement. The experience you create is a statement of who you are and who you want to be. So the first part, know that in your greatest trial can be your greatest triumph, the reaction to the challenge. We talk about the reaction to the trigger, right? The reaction to the experience. It's not technically about the choice we make. It's the energy behind the choice that we're making. If we're coming from a fearful place versus if we're coming from a loving place. Then you move into the experience you create is a statement of who you are and who you want to be. That reminds me of being impeccable with your word. When you declare to the universe, I am a compassionate, loving being, you're declaring that you are a compassionate, loving being. And then you choose everything from that space. You choose then your experiences. That free will kicks in and you're like, does this align with me being a compassionate and loving human? If it doesn't, we make a different choice. You came into life already knowing everything. All we're doing is demonstrating that. Because it's so funny. It's like when we always say like we have everything we need already within us, and we know we do, but sometimes the concept feels like far-fetched. But we have everything we need. We're becoming anew. We're expanding on everything we already know, which is kind of crazy to think about. You are manifesting every single moment of every single day. We are the creator. And events, occurrences, happenings, conditions, circumstances are all created out of our thoughts, our consciousness. So that's events, occurrences, happenings, conditions, circumstances. We do not choose the circumstance. We are simply observing them and deciding who we are in regards to them. It's the first step in changing anything. This kind of blew my mind, how he presented this. Acknowledging that it exists and that we created it. So when we have something difficult come into our life, it's not that we are the difficultness, right? It's easy for the ego to attach and be like, well, now we're a failure because we think failure that we perceived that. what we're actually doing when we talk about being the observer is like when you take a step back from that and you observe it from the outside and you're like, this is not me. I am the person watching this, right? When we talk about the ego versus like the higher self, when we take time out and we say, that does not define who I am. That is not who I am. I am the person who is aware of this. I'm the person aware of these thoughts. I am the person aware of this circumstance. And by just acknowledging that it exists and acknowledging that it's not wrong, that was the thing. He says, the statement, it's that it's not wrong. It's just not an accurate statement of who you are. So when something, let's say bad happens, right? And I'm using bad in layman's terms because nothing is bad. It's just the perception. Disconnecting from this is who I am and becoming the observer of it, acknowledging that it's there, being like, okay, this is what it's here. This is not who I am. I am divine consciousness. I am this beauty. I am evolved, whatever it is. And then deciding that that's not who you are. It's like, instead of identifying with it, that's how you start to change it. You take yourself away from the identification of that circumstance. And you start to choose differently. Because normally, subconsciously, we're like, well, we failed. Like we can't do that because that didn't work. When in reality, we're like, that's just not who I am. Let's choose different. How can we do it differently now? Let's go over here and let's try it differently over here and let's see how that comes out. Let's see what that experience is. And through this, we're just evolving and growing through every single circumstance, everything, every moment of every day. I'm like, that's so simple. The mistake is not in choosing something bad. It's our labeling of it being bad and then calling ourselves being bad for experiencing it. And then we say that like we're a bad person or that we're a bad human and we judge ourselves. And then we're like disowning what we are able to create. It's like taking personal responsibility and just taking a step outside of it and looking at it and say, okay, this is not who I am. How can I choose differently? Let's try it over here. Let's try to choose this. Let's see what this experience is. Instead of just trying something, it doesn't work, we give up and we're like, well, we're a failure. We're not good enough. It's like, no, we are the master creator. We get to create whatever experience we want in our lives. If we don't enjoy that experience, if we consciously then choose, say we manifest something and we consciously we create this and all of a sudden we're like, well, that doesn't feel great. That doesn't feel right. Choose differently. Choose to create something else then. We get so hung up on something not feeling the way we want it to, or that's a failure because it didn't feel the way that we wanted to, or look the way we wanted to, or whatever it was. And it's like, let's try different. Let's continue to experience. Let's look at that as like, wow, that was great. Cool. Let's try it over here and let's see if that fills our heart up a little bit more. Let's see if that aligns with our soul a little bit more. Let's try that and see what happens. But it's so easy for us to give up. And then we're like, we have no power. It's like, yeah, we do. We just created that. If we don't want to keep associating and labeling with it, let's try something else and create something new. Like, that's how incredible every moment of every single day is. It's how powerful we are. Okay, then they go into talking about collective consciousness. And this was interesting because I wrote down, okay, universe experiences that we don't create individually. So this is like a hurricane, or let's say the pandemic, or like all of this is collective consciousness energy off of a group of people who created it. Then we individually decide how to move through it. So it was almost like how we decide to move through the pandemic, right? Like maybe we didn't individually create it, but consciously, group consciousness, right? There was some disconnect in that, or say we decided to experience the pandemic in order to continue to expand, or like whatever it is, we don't actually 100% know. It could be a million different things. But they say how you decide to move through that is the important part. It's then your experience through something. So say it's like a big umbrella and then we're like underneath the umbrella, all of us. And it's like, okay, so this is like the collective consciousness. How are we going to choose to decide what aligns with our soul then, right? Are we going to go into the fearful phase and do this and do that? Maybe that aligns with our soul. Or are we going to go and choose to be more aware and, feel more loved and see the beauty in this sort of natural disaster, right? He says, deciding what and who and how it means to you and how you act upon it, that is the purpose of the soul evolving. That is the soul evolving, is that choice in there. Let's see, ways to experience less pain. Yes, it's so simple. It's so simple me saying this, but I'm like, ways to experience less pain in our external, so like, experiencing less pain in our relationships. God was like, it's really simple. You just change the way you look at it. You start to change the inner world. You start to change the mindset. We talk about this all the time. The mindset, the illusion, we change the inner dialogue. We change how we're perceiving it. Why are we perceiving something to be bad? Where along the way do we pick up the illusion that, getting into an argument is bad? Maybe that is a healthy way of communicating, that sometimes your soul has to express itself that way. And I don't mean screaming and yelling and all that, but having a full adult conversation with someone and having a disagreement, that's not bad. That can be healthy. That is healthy. It's expression. It's how your soul, is choosing to grow and evolve. Pain is a result of wrong thought. It's an error in thinking. Pain results from a judgment you have made about it. Remove the judgment, remove the pain. So the only reason we're suffering and we feel pain from something is because we are judging it to be suffering and pain and bad and shameful and fearful and doubtful and however else we want to label it. So if we want to look at it differently, remove the judgment of it. Look at it from a neutral standpoint. What is this showing me? How can I choose differently? What is this experience? How am I learning from this experience? How am I evolving? How is this feeding my soul? Like, all different questions you can ask. Do what reflects you. That which you condemn will condemn you, and that which you judge will later become. You will later become. So when we talk about who you're choosing to be, if you're choosing to be a loving, compassionate being, continue following everything that aligns with you being a loving, compassionate being. And it's so funny when judgment has been coming up so much, and I just did a video on judgment, so you guys will see that too, but judging is, just a part of the human experience, first of all, but second of all, it's how we look at the judgment. When I would catch myself judging, I would automatically label it as shameful or fearful or regret, and I would get so mad and angry. And I'm like, if I would just remove the shame and the fear from that judgment and just observe it and just be like, okay, this came up. This is a part of the experience. How can we learn from this? How can we choose? How can we look at it from a different way? And you take that pain out of it. You take that emotional charge out of it. That's how you continue to grow and evolve. It's like you become a little more neutral, less triggered. Yeah, it's like your soul seeks to change these or to find people to help you support along these changes, right? I remember divine feminine consciousness coming in and giving a message on relationships, and it was like, the scars on our hearts is not something to be shameful of. Other souls, just like we do in them, but let's say other souls seek out and find those scars because through those experiences, through your experience, you help them evolve and heal, just like we do in other people. That which we look for in other people is us just looking for a part of ourselves in them and remembering that part of us in them. That's why relationships are so beautiful, because we're just looking for ourselves. We're just looking for our reflection. And then we find it and we're like, this is amazing. It's like, of course it is. It's who we are. We're amazing, of course. The greatest gift is free will, opportunity to do as we please and experience the results of that. The chance to create yourself anew in the image of what you really are, based on our grandest idea of who we are. To think of something as wrong is to restrict you. It takes away from the reality of who you are and experiencing truth. So, and then I wrote down, talk about the ceremony. When I was sitting, I told you guys how I was watching God experiencing God, God experiencing itself. When we judge other people and we try to keep people down or in a container or judge their actions or behaviors or whatever it may be, that is judging God. That is not letting God and consciousness experience itself. So what I was doing in ceremony is I was just sitting there holding space for people to do so. When you talk about your relationships, if someone's opening up to you and they need advice, or they just need you to hold space, or they just need, you to be there to help them through it. It's not necessarily about what you say or what you do, or of course that helps, but just holding space for them to work through it, to experience through it. That is helping the evolution. That's helping you heal, that's helping them heal. Hell, he talks about the concept of hell and how it's not real, physically real, but how internally it could be, and how hell is the opposite of joy. It's the unfulfillment. It's knowing who you are and not allowing yourself to experiencing it. It's like condemning your own self through unworthiness, through fear, through whatever it is. It's the separation from God. We ourselves choose this the minute we think ill of ourselves, but it's never real, and God will never turn their back on us. We are a piece of that, so there's no way, there's nothing that could ever happen or nothing we could ever do that would change that. And they go in and talk about it too. It was really beautiful. The purpose of the soul is to fully realize itself while in the body, to become the embodiment of all that there is. And then he starts talking about the universal laws being neutral, and it's just cause and effect, and it's just nature balancing itself out. And he goes in and talks about how the greatest teacher is nature. And it always is. Everything we ever need can be found in nature all the time. You just have to create and hold the space to be out there, to listen, to observe, to keep asking questions. The concept turned to experience for God to recognize itself through the experience. So that's basically why we're here. That's the soul evolution, is turning a concept into an experience, letting the idea come to fruition, creating the idea through our actions to experience the results, the cause and effect. And when he talks about the universal laws, and I could do a whole video on the universal laws too, because I love them, but think of that as just like keeping things in order. It's like the more that you understand and know them, it's almost like the easier that the experience becomes, the easier that the choices become, the clearer, I would say the clearer that it comes in. How to remember God. Go within, feel the stillness. And then he said, when you're experiencing the outside world, this is something to practice, is to go within. Because we get really busy and we get really sidetracked and we get through our to-do lists. And he was saying, if you were to just take a moment and go back within yourself and check in with that space and then create from that space, your world totally changes. And we know this. This is all the stuff we know. If I do not go within, I go without. That is the disconnect, is when we live externally. When we start from the inside out, that is how we become anew. It's how we grow. Never judge another's life experience. Nothing is less than, nothing is bigger than, nothing is smaller than. Because you never know what that soul is incarnating in this life, and the lessons that they're going through, and the growth that they're doing, and the completion of their journey, or however much longer they still have on their journey. I had to really, 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 really tune into this when I had a client the other day. And we can never, it wasn't even a client, I think it was a friend. It was so beautiful to watch them move through their experience, for me to remove the judgment and to just watch them talk through it, move through it, even if it was heartache, even if it was hard. Because we never know what lesson they are undoing, what karma they are undoing, what love they're enabling, like what love they're creating, the expansion of love within themselves. Like, it's infinite. It's beautiful. So if we take that judgment out of it and we just let them express themselves, we just let God continue to express itself. Look towards everyone and give thanks. There's perfection in the process. Never interfere with choice. Don't judge or condemn this. Help the soul choose the higher path. Watch and hold the space. never with judgment, and allow them to make their own choices. That's the beauty of evolution. That's the beauty of the soul expansion. Exactly what we're talking about. Allow each soul to walk its path. And he brought up Jesus in this, saying how Jesus only healed the people that came to him, that sought him out. People that sought out his guidance is who he led. He didn't like go up to someone and say, hey, you need this, you need that, choose this. It's like, no, someone came and sought him out and was like, how can I do this? And he led them to the path of least resistance. He led them back inward to their heart so they could make the choices, the decisions to heal, to see God within themselves. You know, like we all have the ability to heal ourselves, and that's what Jesus was turning people towards, was back inward for them to recognize that in themselves. So never take away someone else's free will or choice, because that is part of the soul's evolution. That is part of God's evolution. Yes, suffering. He goes into talking about like third world countries and feeling bad. I remember talking about this with my dad too, because he's like, you know, look at the third world countries, if they don't have food, or if they don't have water, or if they don't have this or that. And it's like, he's like, you know, I feel so bad for them. And of course we have compassion, of course, and empathy. But that doesn't mean they're not living a full life. And I don't mean like, again, never judging, because who knows, like that soul incarnated into that country to experience that. Who knows what karma or whatever they're moving through, whatever experience and expansion they're moving through. But also, because they might not have fresh water coming out of a faucet, say they have to go to a stream or a body of water, it doesn't take away from their life experience just because it's different than ours. It's just us judging them that because they don't have a faucet with running water, that we think that they're inferior. And it's not. They could be more fulfilled than we are here with running water and food on the table. It's never our place to judge someone and their life experience, because that is their growth and that is their evolution. He goes into talking about if we incarnated and we were like, well, we know we're God, like it's that simple. Or we know we can heal ourselves and this is how we do it, and we blink and we're healed. It's like, then how would religion happen? And how would God evolve through religion? And then how would science and medicine evolve and grow? Because through the experience of science and religion, God is expanding. God is evolving. So we have all these different like facets of how it's happening and how it's moving, and never judging that. I said, we have created life to be this way. Let's see. Our world exists exactly as we have chosen it to be. And he goes into talking about like Mother Earth and kind of destroying Earth, which I think I'm going to touch on that might be a separate video, because that was a really interesting concept about collective consciousness and sort of the pathway that we're going or have been going or went or whatever. So, okay, let me go to this paragraph. Sorry, I know we're getting a little long here, but we're almost there. So it's 51. Let's see. This was interesting. Do I want to talk about this now? Okay, 2. So basically they're having a conversation about like all the negative things in the world, and they bring up assault in particular. And this is the response. So when we talk about, so let's say my personal, because I don't mind talking about my physical assault, the one of them we'll talk about in particular. And it's like, well, she didn't choose that. You know, I didn't choose to experience that. I didn't choose to have, you know, my body be violated and taken, and all of the ripple effect and all these things. And this is what God had responded with. You are all at root cause for the conditions which exist, which create in the robber the desire or the perceived need to steal. You have all created the consciousness which makes assault possible. It is when you see in yourself that which caused the crime that you begin at last to heal the condition from which it sprang. I remember listening to a podcast, and I'm still mulling this over, you guys. remember listening to a podcast with, was she a shaman? She might have been a shaman. It was on Luke Stories, one of his podcasts. I'll have to find it. But she had gone into a similar sort of concept, and it wasn't as severe as assault, but it was pretty deep what she was talking about. But she had said, collectively, we have created that consciousness. Like when he talks about the robber needing to steal, whatever that need is, we have created that collectively over years, over repetition, over negative thoughts or negative illusions or whatever it may be. Like we have created that need to create that experience. And of course, we perceive that to be as something not great. Of course, we think of assault like that's not great, right? Robbing someone is not a great thing to happen. But when we want to heal on a massive level, we look at the root cause of where that has come from. We start to heal the condition from where it came. And to me, I feel like judgment is a huge part of it. And that could be self-judgment. That could be how we judge others. But think of all, like really sit and think about what judgment can create. Like how deep that can really ripple effect by judging, and the judgment of something in a negative way or in a way that is perceived to be negative. That holds a lot of power. And if you continuously repeat that over and over and over again for thousands of years, probably going to get something along that same frequency, right? So interesting. When we can see within ourselves the consciousness that created the crime, we begin to heal the condition from where it came. That's like a heavy one. It is not in the struggling that the price... he talks about, sorry, one second. Yeah, he talks about like, we can't fail at life. We can't fail at this experience. We can't mess it up, basically. And the important thing is not to continue the challenge, right? It's not to continue in the challenging aspect of something. It's not to continue the struggle. It's in the surrender of it. The surrender of that illusion, the surrender of the story that we tell around it. Why are we perceiving it to be a struggle? What are we resisting that is creating that struggle, that buffering, that sort of rock against rock? That is how we win, is surrendering to it. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, this was pretty powerful. He says, each event and adventure that is called to yourself by yourself in order that you might create and experience who you really are. So if you really think about everything you've experienced in this life and everything we're going to continue to experience in life, our soul created it and called to it to then experience God. Like that's like everything. Like everything we have experienced and everything we do is just an opportunity to experience God. If we just sort through and see through the illusion, the society perceived of what it needs to be or how it is or whatever it is, or the old thought pattern or whatever it is. And I think the more that we, this was in a podcast this morning, was like the repetition of something. It's like keep on doing it, keep on shifting the mindset, keep on doing that every single day. And it gets easier and easier and easier. And the next thing you know, those then challenges or those struggles then become easier. They don't seem like such a struggle. You surrender to it. You change the dialogue. Okay, he talks about laws. Let me just see here. There's something about Jesus that I had. Oh yeah, I wanted to read this part. There is no coincidence, and nothing happens by accident. Each event and adventure is called to yourself by yourself in order that you might create and experience who you really are. All true masters know this. That is why mystic masters remain perturbed, I don't know that word, you guys can correct me, in the face of the worst experience. I would say like undisturbed, I guess, in the face of the worst experience of life, as you would define it to be. Each event and adventure is called to you, to yourself, by yourself, in order that you might create and experience who you really are. It's just an opportunity to experience God. Okay. There are 3 laws he talks about. The first one, we can be, do, and have whatever we can imagine. Whatever we can think up here, we can be, we can do, and we can have. It's that easy. Or so it says. Second law, you attract what you fear. Now he talks about, this makes me think of like attracting like. Hold on, he talks about attracting fear. Hold on one sec. Let me see if I can do, sorry guys, bear with me. Oh yeah, that blew my mind. Sorry, I'm looking through the notes. You attract what you fear, I think of like attracting like in the frequencies. That's what I get from that one. I'm going to dive deeper into that though. And then the third law, emotion is the power that attracts. So through the emotion, the emotional part of the experience is actually how we then be, do, have what we imagine and what we attract. The emotion is, it's almost like the emotion is like the action step to actually creating in the 3D the manifestation, the experience, the physicality of the experience is through our emotion. Our emotion in the manifesting, say the universal law of attraction, is our emotion. That's the connecting piece, because we are the power, right? Like we have the power. Our emotion is the power. How we feel, how we experience, how we perceive. This is the part that like blew my mind. And I'm going to say it and I'm like, hopefully I can explain it. It says emotion is energy in motion. So the emotion is our energy in motion. When you move energy, you create an effect. So when we choose something or when we create the cause, right? Effect has to come. That's one of the universal laws. There has to be a ripple effect from it. And if you move enough of the energy, you create matter. And if you continue to move enough matter around, you push it all together and you manipulate the energy long enough, you get the matter. That's the alchemy of the universe. That's the secret to life. That is how you manifest, is from the emotion that creates the motion of it. And when you make a choice and you move the energy consciously, you create an effect, right? You choose what you want to create and you do this enough, you start to bring it all together, the energy together into the physicality of it. That's the alchemy. Blows my mind. Thought is pure energy. That's how powerful our thoughts are. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, the laws are simple. So bringing it back to those 3 laws. Number 1, thought is creative. 2, fear attracts like energy. And 3, love is all there is, which we know. And I want to read this last part of this because this got me good. So he says, love is the answer. So I'll piggyback off of that. Love is all that there is. From the highest mountain, it has been shouted. In the lowest places, its whisper has been heard. Through the corridors of all human experience has this truth been echoed. Love is the answer, yet you have not listened. Now come you to this book, asking God again what God has told you countless times in countless ways, yet I will tell you again here, in the context of this book. Will you listen? Will you truly hear? What do you think brought you to this material? How does it come to pass that you are holding it in your hands? Do you think I know not what I am doing? There are no coincidences in the universe. I have heard the crying of your heart. I have seen the searching of your soul. I know how deeply you have desired the truth. In pain have you called out for it, and in joy. Unendingly have you beseeched me. Show myself, explain myself, reveal myself. I am doing so here in terms so plain you cannot misunderstand, in language so simple you cannot be confused, in vocabulary so common you cannot get lost in the verbiage. So go ahead now, ask me anything. I will contrive to bring you the answer. The whole universe, sorry if I start crying, the whole universe will I use to do this, so be on the lookout. This book is far from my only tool. You may ask a question, then put this book down, but watch, listen. The words to the next song you hear, the information in the next article you read, the storyline of the next movie you watch, the chance utterance of the next person you meet, or the whisper of the next river, the next ocean, the next breeze that caresses your ears, all these devices are mine. All these avenues are open to me. I will speak to you if you will listen. I will come to you if you will invite me. I will show you then that I have always been there. This book is blowing my mind. That is chapter 1. Chapter 1. I hope that this resonated. I hope that you found value in this. I'm excited for chapter 2. I have a feeling I'll either be uploading these either twice a month, probably be twice a month, because this, like I said, content is a little thick and dense in a beautiful way, and I want to make sure that I am integrating it and coming from my heart when I'm explaining it in a way that I understand, so that we can all understand, because we are all one. Thinking of you guys. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.